Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Let me disclose to you how I see the conflict in Ukraine. I think this started after 1991 when NATO, as weasels, did not fulfill their verbal promise to Soviet Union, which was we are not going to extend or expand NATO into the Eastern Europe. Therefore, give us Eastern Germany, allow them to unite. People think that they did it. No, they didn't. They were allowed to. And that was the understanding. James Baker told that the Soviet leaders. Now, the Soviets were naive, I would say, and that angers me, because if you are in such a position of power, you cannot allow yourself to be a naive person. I'm pretty sure Khrushchev or Stalin would not have agreed to this bullshit. Everything good, I'm for it. The problem is the NATO expanded more and more and more. Got close to Russian border, and the Russians told NATO that since you don't want us into NATO, we can only guess that you see us as your enemy and you want to destroy us. NATO said no. Well, the Russians said, you got too close to us. Not good. NATO said, we don't give a fuck. Okay. Russia said, well, you know what? We have some national security concerns with your military presence close to our borders. NATO said, we don't give up again. All right. Then it was Viktor Yanukovych until 2014. He was the democratically elected president of Ukraine. He did not do what the Western weasels wanted, and he said, well, maybe we should also do some business with Russia. Therefore, some outside forces from the West supported a coup in Ukraine in 2014. Bloody coup. People died. Viktor Yanukovych was deposed, democracy was suspended by this to call them traitors, because if you depose a democratic elected government of a country, the legitimate government of a country elected by vote, you are, with the help of outside agencies, you are a traitor by definition. Nevertheless, they got the power. They were immediately recognized by the democratic countries, the free world. Somehow they didn't like democracy and they decided this is just fine. The Maidan revolution, or however you want to call it. Then these guys in Ukraine, with the help of NATO, with the sponsors, started arming themselves. The guys in East Ukraine said, you know what? We do not agree with this coup. Therefore, we don't recognize your government. It's okay, we're going to send the tanks. They sent the tanks, these guys fought back. There was Minsk Agreement 1, Minsk Agreement 2 between Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France. Germany and France as guarantors that they will make sure that Ukraine will implement the Minsk agreements. And it was Proshachevich, Prava, whatever his name is. And then it was Zelensky. Zelensky ran on this platform that he's going to implement the Minsk agreements and he was going to make peace with Russia and the Eastern territories, the Donbass. The guys in the Donbass agreed to be part of Ukraine as Ukrainians, but a little autonomous, because they're Russian speaking and so on. Well, the Russians said, if things start over there again, and Zelensky, who was elected with the support of the Western countries, and he appointed Zelensky being a Ukrainian. He appointed Zhmyhal, a Ukrainian, as the prime minister. He appointed Oleksiy Reznikov, a Ukrainian, as a defense minister. And he appointed Yermak, a Ukrainian, as the presidential chief of staff. All Ukrainians, 4. All right? Now, I know how Ukrainians look at these 4 little pigs, which are the 4 that I just mentioned, and I guarantee you they're not very happy about it. It's okay, they got in charge of it like they got in charge, or they thought they got in charge after 1918 in Russia, turning it into Soviet Union. You remember Mr. Bronstein, or whatever his name was, Trotsky, and others of the same kind, like Kaganovich and others. All right, you can look and find them all. No problem. These guys in Kiev had no intention to follow the Minsk Agreements 1 and 2, and the thing started again in the Donbass. The Russians said, you know what, we're not going to allow you to kill our people, as the Americans did not allow the Mexicans to kill their people in Texas. Remember that one? Okay, now that you know that one, which was done in 1850, I think, 1850, so they were way ahead of time. The Russians went in and NATO pulled in with everything. NATO. I don't think Zelensky is not a leader. Zelensky is just a puppet of NATO, United States. NATO is United States, with weasel countries, hiding behind the organization that actually is just United States with these guys, just to show global legitimacy. The whole point here is dominance, control, power. That's all. In this case, United States wants to take over certain kind of countries that became too strong to be acceptable around. Now, on the other hand, Russia has a lot of natural resources and it has nuclear weapons. That's a big deal. China has nuclear weapons, doesn't have that many resources, therefore it's going to get from Russia and it's going to sell its products to United States. United States will going to keep printing money, producing not much, and will just get loans and function in deficit, economic deficit. No problem. The goal is not Russia. The goal of this fight for dominance is China and Russia. Once Russia is done, then it's going to be China, unless China is going to be reminded, see the Russian example? You're next. So play ball as the way we want, do what we tell you, and you're not going to be turned into Russia. That's what it is. First, I will tell you as a personal note, I have something personal with the Ukrainian nation. I have nothing against it. I have more for Ukrainian nations than I have for, let's say, Slovaks or Czechs, for personal reasons. I like the Russians as well. I don't have anything against them. My problem here is this. I do not like when these guys fight one another, kill one another for other people's interest. That's all. I don't like that. That's the whole purpose. Now, when I say, well, the Ukrainians and the Russians, what I'm talking about is those 4 little pigs that were and are supported by NATO, which pulls all the weapons in, they can, to destroy Russia. That's the whole goal here. That's the whole point. And after Russia, China will learn the lesson and it's going to be cornered. China without Russia's resources is going to be dead. The Arabs, Saudi Arabia will be caught by the balls after that, and Mr. Mohammed bin Salman will shut up. Guarantee you that. Got that? My problem here is that some interest, global interest, are having countries destroyed, nation wiped out, cultures, for their own interest, which is dominance and economic and power. That's all. This is how I see it. When I talk about in my videos about the Ukrainians, I'm not talking about the Ukrainian nation. I'm talking about the guys, the Ukrainians being in charge of the Ukrainian nation. All right? I don't think they want the Ukrainian nation's good. I think they are destroying Ukraine. And the Russians, I think they have to react to these guys' dominance. You might say, well, wait a second. If Russia could be in their position, they might do the same thing. They might. Okay? That's a scenario. I'm not talking about scenarios. I'm talking about what's going on. Could be, could be not. So, here you have it, my friends. When I talk about these events, I'm angry because I see the Ukrainian nation, the Ukrainians, being used by those motherfuckers, to fight the Russians. That's why. And Ukrainians and the Russians are closer than those fuckers are with either of these two. That's what bothers me. And those fuckers are using other European idiots to create this problem. And European Union and the European states are destroying their economies. Those guys are not. Ukraine gonna get rid of its nation. The Russians are gonna be hurt as well. And that's the way it is. For what? Do you think freedom and democracy? I think people who think that way are just dumbasses. Ignorance. All right? Ignorant. That's what I think they are. So I'm sorry for the Ukrainian nation. I'm sorry for the Russian nation. And I have no empathy or sympathy for those guys who organize things like this. Oh, I'm not saying Putin is an angel, but whenever you want to see how a situation is and who's right and who's wrong, put yourselves in those guys' shoes and see how you like it. If you start from we are good, they are bad, go to church. Okay? Go to church. Then you're going to find all good and all evil. If you go around the block a few times, you know that doesn't work in real life. And that's it. I'm not upset with the Russians. I'm not upset with the Ukrainians. I'm upset with the guys who happen to be in charge of the Ukrainian nation and doing the bidding of those guys over there. And I'm not talking about Americans, because Americans are also played by the interests. Okay? So it's not the Americans. Unfortunately, the American military, the American economy, our taxes are used by the same interest to put pressure and have those guys fight like idiots. And we'll see what's going to happen. Luckily, and I will say it, luckily, those crazies, the Russians, did not use nuclear weapons yet. That's very, very, very lucky. And not only lucky, I would say that shows a lot of self-restraint. Self-restraint. Remember, the Americans used 2 atomic bombs just like this for situations even milder than the Russians find themselves. And they still did not use it. Okay, now you have it exactly how I see these things occurring. Arrest me. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.